Hello you beautiful people, Aaron here, back with another video. Finally, the results are in. Collei, let's check out her kit. I'm going to speed this video along because I only have a few days to get both her and Tignari's videos out, so let's hop right into her kit overview. But I do have a few things to say first. Builds shown later on are made with hyper investment, and personal experience will cause variation in the outcome. There are also chapters in the description for you to peruse my video at your leisure. Also, like, comment, and subscribe. So what can Collei do? Collei seems to be a sub DPS Dendro applicator. Her skill is a Dendro boomerang that can hit twice and applies Dendro on each hit. With her Ascension 1 passive, her skill gains the Sprout effect, which can place a ring around the active character if your team triggers a Dendro reaction before the boomerang returns. This ring will deal Dendro damage 2 times and a very small AoE around the active character for its 3 seconds of uptime, while also applying Dendro every other hit. Her C2 can double the duration of Sprout, which will also double the damage of it. Her Elemental Burst has Collei throw out her signature companion, dealing a burst of Dendro damage, after which it continues to deal damage once every half a second for 6 seconds, while also applying Dendro once every 6 hits. The duration of her bursts can be increased by 1 second up to a max of 3 seconds with her Ascension 4 passive by having the active character proc a Dendro-related reaction while inside her burst. Her C4 turns her into a pseudo buffer by allowing her burst to grant 60 elemental mastery to all allies other than herself. Her C6 also pops an initial hit of burst damage when her skill hits an enemy, but only on the first enemy. And finally, her C1 grants her 20% energy recharge while not on the field. So that's her kit. It's very straightforward and focuses mostly on her sub DPS capabilities, but the most interesting part about her is her Dendro application, which I mentioned some of before. Her skill is able to always apply Dendro to the target due to not having an ICD, which can pair well with Sacrificial Bow for even more Dendro application. Her Sprout has its own ICD following the normal rule, which is separate from her skill despite it still counting as skill damage. So she can use this to apply Dendro once before C2 and twice at C2 and beyond. Her burst is partially upsetting because it does not follow the standard rule and it instead only follows the standard timer, which limits its Dendro application. With her Ascension 4 passive, her burst will be able to apply Dendro only 4 times. Her C6 I could not find any information on, but I will consider the mini elemental burst to share ICD with her actual burst, allowing the first hit of her skill to double apply Dendro. This is all very important because ICD can make a character potentially amazing like Xiangling and Jingshou. It seems to me like Collei does have quite a good amount of Dendro application, but most of it is at the start of her rotation and doesn't last too long afterward. It appears to me that her application for her rotations are split into thirds. The first third of the rotation, she has an absurd amount of Dendro application, as she applies it 9 or 10 times with Sacrificial Bow. Then the second third, it starts to fall off and is only really happening once every 2.5 seconds, or 2 to 3 times from her burst. The final third, she has absolutely none at all, but this is generally when a rotation would come to an end and restart anyway. This leads me to the stats she needs, as she is going to need a good amount of energy recharge in order to keep that burst up. She has a 60 energy requirement burst and generates 9 energy per skill, which means she actually doesn't need too much energy recharge to make use of her burst. Sacrificial Bow helps out a lot too, as it doubles her energy regen while also granting her energy recharge too. With the bow, you would need only 166.7% energy recharge while on the field. Then there's her own damage. Despite her skill having a pretty good talent multiplier, the rest of her kit has low multipliers and instead benefit more from elemental mastery with spread introduced. However, since bloom reactions take into account the elemental mastery of characters who last applied the reaction, you can also run more attack on her in place of elemental mastery, as it won't be that great in certain situations. Then obviously is crit rate and crit damage for obvious reasons. Again, with more obviousness, her best weapon will be the Sacrificial Bow. I have brought it up multiple times before because it's kind of a must on her. Her skill not only deals damage twice, but it also pierces and is ranged, which allows it to hit clusters of enemies to fish for the proc. I'm also assuming her Sprout can proc the weapon passive, giving her more opportunities to fish for the weapon passive proc. This means that she can technically run the weapon at lower refines than other characters could. It also grants her about half the energy recharge she needs to have consistent burst uptime. Since it would also double the Dendro application coming from both her skill and Sprout, this weapon would also turn her full Dendro application from 9 applications without the bow up to 14 applications with the bow, all of which is in an AoE. To compare, Xiangling's Pyronado at C4 will apply Pyro about 13 times, also in an AoE. Favonius Warbow, the Stringless, and the Elegy of the End are all other weapons that come to mind that would be very good for her, but not to the degree that Sacrificial bow would. Other than those, I don't think any weapon can hold a candle to sacrificial bow, due to the overwhelming energy gain and Dendro application it grants Collei. But what about artifacts? What can she use? Well, continuing on with the obviousness that this video is now, I guess, being known for, the Deepwood Memories artifact set is top tier for Collei. It grants her Dendro damage bonus plus Dendro resistance shredding when an elemental skill or burst hits an opponent. However, I have two more in mind for Collei: the Noblesse set for attack buffing and burst damage, and an instructor set for elemental mastery buffing. Both of these sets can be really great to use for Collei, but which one is best for her? Well, let's take a look at her numbers. For each build, as you can see, the total damage from Deepwood and the total damage from Noblesse are very close together, yet they both offer different ways of damage buffing. Noblesse would be a great all-purpose set for almost any team comp, but can get easily outshined by Deepwood Memories in situations relating to Dendro. Deepwood Memories is very good for Collei, but since she herself does not have a crazy amount of damage, it is not that great for just her and can just be replaced by Noblesse. Deepwood really requires another source of Dendro damage for Collei to make the most use out of it. However, this requirement is really easy to fulfill, since Tignari would want another Dendro character with him to hold the set so he can wield a Wanderer's set. There is also the fact that all Dendro reactions other than Aggravate and Burn deal Dendro damage and will therefore be buffed by this set by about 22.2%, so these reactions will also fulfill this prerequisite. However, there is also Instructor set, which, depending on how little elemental mastery the rest of the team has, can buff transformative reaction damage by up to 90%, which could be considered a great trade-off in damage if you really want that for Collei. So when should you use each set over the other? Well, the Instructor set I can see being specifically beneficial in transformative reaction team comps with characters who have less than 300 elemental mastery on them. Another comp I see it being decent in is when she is the sole Dendro user in an Aggravate team comp, so she can buff the Aggravate damage. Noblesse I can see being a great all-purpose set for her, but considering she has two great all-purpose sets with one of them just being better in most situations, I can only really see Noblesse being used in burning comps. Then there's the Deepwood Memories, which is best for all other scenarios, but specifically in scenarios with other sources of Dendro damage. You may think that's all I have for today, but there's one more question that I want to ask that can only really be asked in Collei's situation: burning or spread? What's better? This could be actually made into an entire video itself, but since Dendro MC cannot utilize burning well due to their burst committing seppuku when it sees pyro, and since Tignari was made with spread in mind, Collei is the only Dendro character in the game who will actually be able to enforce burning. So how well does it hold up against spread? Going back to the damage numbers before, let's incorporate spread into them and show the damage per tick and damage per second of burning next to each build. With spread, Collei's damage increases by an average of 80% or 80,000 damage. Since Collei is the only Dendro character that really works with burning, and since Dendro is the element that needs to be reapplied to burning to keep it going, burning does always count on her EM. That being said, burning needs to stay on the target for about 41 seconds on average in order for it to out-damage spread. Considering Collei gets her spread damage rotation over about a 12-second duration, spread seems to deal about 242% more damage than burning in the same amount of time. Even with the full elemental mastery build plus Crimson Witch set, the burning ticks would deal almost 1000 damage, but that's just not enough to make up for any damage lost by doing something as weird as that. So at this point in time, burning is not usable. Collei seems to be a pretty solid Dendro character. She's definitely not crazy good, but with Sacrificial Bow, she does have the highest Dendro application of the Dendro characters we are getting in 3.0. Therefore, unlike the Dendro Traveler and Tignari, her worth is reliant on the reactions themselves instead of anything she can do. This leaves her in a weird and hazy state where we can't really figure out how good she is just based on what we see on paper. Only in live can we actually see her full effectiveness, but I do predict that she will be the staple of many Dendro team comps until Kusanal is released, when she replaces every Dendro character in the meta. What do you think about Collei? Do you think she'll be strong? Do you think she'll be weak? How do you plan to build her? Tell me your thoughts in the comments down below. But with that, it's time for me to move on to Tignari. Thank you all so much for watching, and I hope to see you all in that video. Bye bye!